Imagine stepping into the batter's box with the weight of a nation's expectations on your shoulders. The crowd roars as you face down one of the hardest throwers in the game. But you're not just thinking about the pitch. You're thinking about the entire game, your legacy, and the price of greatness. This is the reality of George Foster, a man who rose from the segregated South to become one of baseball's most feared sluggers. But what if we told you that this legend of the Big Red Machine, a two-time World Series champion and an MVP, wasn't just battling pitchers? What if he was fighting against an invisible enemy? The pressures of race, fame, and his own personal demons. Today, we're diving deep into the life of George Foster, a man who not only conquered the diamond but was also forced to confront his toughest challenges off it. From being a key player in one of the most dominant baseball teams in history to becoming the center of controversy and racial tension, George Foster's story is one of brilliance, struggle, and ultimate resilience. George Foster is a name that resonates with baseball fans, particularly those who remember the glory days of the Big Red Machine. His journey through Major League Baseball, however, was not just one of triumph but also of deep personal and professional challenges. Today, as George approaches 80, it's hard not to reflect on how his incredible career was marred by struggles, both on and off the field. But what if we told you that one of baseball's brightest stars faced battles that went far beyond the game? Stick around to find out how George Foster went from an MVP and World Series champion to becoming the center of controversy and racial tensions. Before we dive deep into his career, make sure you're subscribed to Baseball Legends. If you love hearing about the unsung heroes and the complex stories of baseball icons, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. You won't want to miss any of our future videos. Now, let's rewind and look back at how George Foster's journey to the big leagues was just the beginning of an extraordinary and often painful career. Born in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, George Foster's journey to baseball greatness began in the heart of the South. His family moved to California when he was young, setting the stage for his future in sports. As a high schooler, George showed natural athletic ability, which caught the attention of scouts and coaches alike. By the time he graduated, his potential was undeniable. After spending just 1 year at El Camino College, he was drafted by the San Francisco Giants in the third round of the 1968 MLB draft. Foster's big break came when he debuted in the majors with the Giants in 1969, only 20 years old. His first taste of the big leagues wasn't easy, playing sparingly and taking on roles like pinch hitter and defensive replacement. But the moments he shared with the Giants that season would shape his career. On September 22nd, he found himself in the lineup when none other than the legendary Willie Mays pinch hit for him, smashing his 600th career home run. For a young player like George, that moment must have been surreal. The following year, Foster returned to the Giants, hitting his first career home run. But as promising as his early days seemed, Foster soon found himself on the move. In 1971, he was traded to the Cincinnati Reds, a move that would ultimately transform his career. At the time, the Reds weren't the powerhouse they'd later become, and Foster struggled to find his place. But things were about to change. In Cincinnati, Foster quickly rose to prominence, especially after an injury to regular center fielder Bobby Tolan opened the door for him to start. Although Foster's performance in 1972 wasn't stellar, he played a key role in the Reds' postseason, scoring the series-winning run in the National League Championship Series, NLCS, against the Pittsburgh Pirates. That was a pivotal moment, signaling the start of the Big Red Machine's dominance. By 1975, Foster had found his stride. Under manager Sparky Anderson, the Reds were ready to break out, and Foster's bat was central to their success. He became the regular left fielder, a position that suited his power-hitting style. In that memorable 1975 season, Foster hit .300 with 23 home runs and drove in 78 RBIs. His efforts helped the Reds win 108 games and dominate the postseason. But it was in the World Series that Foster's legend truly began to grow. In a dramatic Game 6 of the World Series against the Boston Red Sox, Foster made a memorable defensive play, catching a fly ball in foul territory and throwing out a runner at home plate to preserve a tie. The Reds would go on to win the series, marking their first championship in 35 years. For Foster, this moment was more than just a highlight. It was a defining part of his career, cementing his place as one of the game's most clutch players. Foster continued to shine in 1976, building on his success. He had a career year, batting .306 with 29 home runs and 121 RBIs, leading the National League in both categories. He made his first All-Star Game appearance that season, where he hit a two-run home run and helped the National League to a resounding victory. The Reds swept the postseason, capturing their second consecutive World Series title, and Foster was firmly established as one of baseball's elite hitters. But as the 1970s came to a close, things began to change for the Big Red Machine and for Foster himself. In 1977, George Foster had one of the most remarkable seasons in baseball history, cementing his place as one of the premier sluggers of the era. Foster's 50-home run campaign was a rare feat, and he became the first player in the modern era to hit that many home runs in a season since the likes of Babe Ruth and Roger Maris. His power surge was the centerpiece of the Cincinnati Reds offense, helping them remain competitive in a changing baseball landscape. By the mid-1980s, George Foster's career had entered a turbulent phase. His struggles with playing time were becoming increasingly apparent, especially as he entered the twilight of his career. As the years went by, Foster found himself pushed aside in favor of younger talent, and his frustrations began to build. His discontent came to a head when he was traded from the Cincinnati Reds, the team where he had spent his most successful years, to the New York Mets in 1982. The move to the Mets was not smooth for Foster, as he struggled to adjust to his new team and his diminished role. Though he was still capable of producing at a high level, the Mets saw him more as a part-time player. This shift in status led to significant emotional tolls, as Foster was no longer the superstar he had once been. The Mets management, including manager Davey Johnson, seemed less inclined to use him in a prominent role, and his diminishing playing time only intensified his frustration. In 1986, the situation reached a boiling point when Foster publicly accused the Mets management of racial bias. He felt that, despite his history and accomplishments, he was not being given a fair chance because of his race. This accusation came after several instances where Foster was benched or given limited opportunities, while other players were preferred for starting roles. His allegations created a rift within the team, particularly with Johnson, who was seen as one of the key figures in the Mets' decision-making process. This conflict only added to the growing sense of alienation Foster felt during his final years in New York. Eventually, the Mets released Foster, marking the end of his MLB career. The emotional toll of being benched and overlooked, combined with the public fallout over the racial controversy, left a lasting impact on Foster. The culmination of years of frustration and the loss of his once dominant status in the game made his departure from the Mets feel like a bitter end to what had been a bright and successful career. Foster's struggles with the Mets underscored the darker side of his journey, and his later years in baseball were marred by both professional and personal challenges. Despite the controversies, Foster's legacy as one of the game's premier sluggers remains intact, but his career is a reminder of the complexities and tensions that can emerge when a player's prime begins to fade. George Foster's career, though marked by moments of struggle, is undeniably one of the most impressive in baseball history. Over the course of 18 seasons in Major League Baseball, he amassed a career total of 348 home runs and 1,239 RBIs. He also posted a .274 batting average, demonstrating both consistency and power in his offensive game. His 1977 season, with 50 home runs, stands out as a singular achievement in the era of big bats, marking him as one of the premier sluggers of the 1970s. Foster was a four-time All-Star and a two-time Gold Glove winner, showcasing his all-around skills as a player. Additionally, he was a key member of the Reds' World Series victories in 1975 and 1976, further cementing his legacy as an integral part of one of the most dominant teams in baseball history. Despite his remarkable achievements, Foster's legacy is often overshadowed by the controversies and challenges that followed his prime. His struggles with playing time, particularly later in his career with the Mets, as well as the racial tensions he faced, clouded his final years in the league. However, it's essential to look beyond the drama and recognize Foster for what he was: one of the most gifted hitters of his generation. His power, leadership, and ability to perform in clutch moments left an indelible mark on the game. Foster's story is not just one of triumph, but also one of resilience and the complexities of navigating fame, race, and change in the world of professional sports.